Thanks.
Shall we do a snap?
Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Oh, no. I think I'm
Why are
like...
you looking like you never done this before?
Because it feels like not right.
What
I feel like I have to lean down.
Oh, you mean their stand?
Like it's like... I mean...
It feels very low.
Yeah, it's... Oh, thank you.
Okay.
This raise. Because mine is the ghetto one.
Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome back to the Open Room Podcast.
Welcome.
I'm Iman.
And I'm Gabby Taylor, trying to get rid of my last name.
And we know it's been a minute. We were just talking about how it literally has been a month since we last filmed.
Yeah.
Life happens.
Yeah.
Ups and downs.
Yeah. Do you think we weren't here because of ups and downs?
No, I mean, I think there were ups and downs throughout the time we were not here. But I do think that life happened, so that's why we weren't on top of it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, travels and
for sure.
working and schedules.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in doing what works, not like living by exactly a schedule, I guess. Like there's a couple, I don't even know if I would say they have a podcast. I don't know. They're on YouTube.
Okay.
And she's a life coach, and they basically only post when they hear from God that they should post something. Like they only record episodes when they have a word from God about something that they should share. I love it. So they're very not consistent.
We should do that.
Yeah, we should. Okay. Then maybe they won't hear from us for a while.
So don't sorry we threw you off the schedule, but don't get comfortable now.
Yeah, don't get attached to the schedule.
Right.
Sorry.
So funny. Well, I think, well, this isn't fully true, but I think, like I said, life is lifing and things are happening. And part of that, which is what we're going to talk about today, is mental health. And Gabby and I both have been on this journey for some time, you know, of trying to figure out what does it look like to work through your mental health while being a Christian?
Yeah.
And so we thought it was very important to talk about it. I know for me, I think it might have been around the time we weren't filming, but I remember like hitting up Gabby as we were talking about like what should we talk about next, and I was like, I just feel like we should talk about this. I think it was a day where I was having a down day, but I just felt like it was something that is needed, because as Christians, I feel like it's taboo, like we don't talk about it. Yeah. I think there's shame about talking about, you know, I feel really down today, or I feel really anxious about this thing, or you know, like, and I'm like, but why? Let's talk about it. Like, I think this is how we get closer to healing. And even in this conversation that Gabby and I will talk about and share, it'll be very vulnerable for us, right? We may be saying things we didn't even know were coming out, right? Yeah. But, you know, I'm here for you, as I hope you're here for me.
Yeah, of course.
As we talk about this hard subject.
Yeah. I am excited. I think this is something that I do care about. Honestly, it may be something that, I don't know how to say it, but like it's a defining thing in my life a little bit. More like emotional health, but that's also tied to mental health. But a big part of it is because this wasn't acknowledged for me growing up. So when I became a disciple, and then I started feeling all these emotions, and I was starting to have to deal with my past, and then I noticed patterns in myself that was my mental health. Like it was a shock, and it's been a journey, like learning how to deal with that. So so I'm excited that we're here. You know,
exciting things.
Yes.
Well, I'm curious, what is your relationship with your mental health?
That's a good question. I think, let's see, I'll say this. One of the things I'm realizing is hard about being a human is that the older we get, the more we believe we know ourselves, but we actually don't.
Yeah.
Like maybe we know more, but we really don't fully know who we are. Like the gift is God knows completely who we are, and like there's comfort in that, and that's a part of us getting closer to him, is us like discovering ourselves, which is cool. And I say that as a preface because I think until this year I thought I understood what my mental health was, like just because throughout grad school was when I really dealt with it. And I've gotten to a better place so many times. So I thought I understood it. And this year I realized I didn't.
Well,
and
now let me ask you, what did it look like dealing with it back then?
Mm-hmm.
And then today when you realize now, present time, that you haven't dealt with it?
Yeah.
Like, what came up for you where you realized you didn't? So 2 questions in
that. Basically, when I started grad school, I moved in with a girl from our ministry. She's like one of my best friends now. And I don't know what specifically happened, but I started in a way like regressing, like acting like how I used to act when I was a kid. Like I wasn't as joyful. I did not want people to hug me. I was like, do not touch me. Like I was like, where is this coming from? And she was like, where is this coming from? You know? Mm-hmm. And I just started having like more breakdowns, just like very emotional. And so eventually I needed to go to therapy, and it took me a while to do that. But basically I just started this journey of like going to therapy every year, different therapists every year. But I would do it for like 4 to 6 months and be better and do it again, you know? But yeah, so that was kind of the start of it. And I was starting to like work through things and learn how to get a handle of it. But basically the difference between then and now, which is actually hard to say, is like, I think then I thought I was going to therapy to work through stuff from the past. And I thought I was working through things maybe that affected me presently, but they were just circumstantial maybe. Like it was like a very temporary thing. And I think this year I realized this is actually just an ongoing struggle for me. Like, because I stopped going to therapy earlier this year. I'm like, I'm good. Like, I'm in a great place, whatever. And a couple months go by and it's bad. And I'm like, what? You know? And I'm like, I've been going to therapy. Like, I was going to therapy straight for 2 years. Same therapist. Like, she's the best. Like, obsessed with her.
Like, every other week? Or every week?
Yeah, like, it was every other week. No, at first it was every single week. Then it was every other week. Then it was like once a month. Then back to every other week. So, yeah. And it was great. And then I was like, I'm in a great place. Like, I don't need this. And then I did. And so I think the realization for me this year is like, wow, this isn't just like a situational thing or a short-term thing. This is like something I need to continue to pursue health in. You know? And I think that was like a harder realization, that this is like a battle like that's ongoing. So yeah,
and that's so sad. And I totally empathize with that, because I don't know if you felt this way, but I think for myself, I could just feel like, is there something wrong with me? You know, like that's the thought. Like when it's, you're right, when it's circumstantial, you feel like, oh yeah, it's just something to work through for the time being, like I'll get past this. But then when it comes back up, you're like, no, like this is deeper than I thought. And is this something, for me, I thought, is this something I'll ever overcome? You know, like, because I'm like, I remember a time where I wasn't so down or anxious or whatever, you know, and now it feels like it's almost all the time, you know. So I totally get that. And it's funny what you said about like, when you think you know yourself, I'm like, yeah, like, but I think that just shows us like our need for Jesus. Like, you know, I think it's like, if we really felt like we knew ourselves, I think we would kind of feel like we had it all figured out, right? Like I know, you know, how to go about this and that, like this is how I am, right? But I think God always shows us that like we're in need of a savior in every situation, you know. And I think for us in this time of like us realizing these things about ourselves, I'm like, wow, I just need you more and more, God. I'm just realizing that like like I don't have it all together, you know. So I get that 100%. Yeah.
Well, what about you? Like, how has your relationship with your mental health been? And then how has that affected your relationship with God?
Yes. Yes. I think I'm trying to think in what way, like positively, negatively, maybe a little bit of both. It definitely shook me it definitely shook me because like when I 2 years ago, I think when I, at least when I was aware of this kind of battle that I had with like depression and anxiety, I was not expecting it. Like, it wasn't like anything happened. Like, things were going great in life. I just got a new job. I was in a relationship. That was great.
Yeah.
Everything was great. You know, answered prayers. Everything was great.
Yeah.
And then it was like, wait, why do I not feel good about like anything right now? Like, but like the circumstances like are not making sense, like, for me to feel this way. So that was very scary. And then it was also very scary to be open about it. So like, I think one of the first people I told was probably like my mom. But so I talked to my mom, and then my mom told me to go to the doctor. Sorry, I talked to my mom. My mom talked to my sister.
Oh, okay.
My sister's a doctor.
Oh,
so my mom
yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, but what I told my mom was, at the time I was struggling to focus. I was struggling to be interested, lack of interest, all that stuff. And so my mom like started bawling, crying. Yeah, and she was like saying something like, and she was putting it with depression.
Yeah.
And she was like, I've noticed this for a while now, and you know, I didn't know what it was, but you saying this, like, it's just so scary, and like I want you to like just look into this and da da da. And I was like, okay, like I was thinking it was just like I struggle to focus, you know. But now you're saying that you're seeing something in me that you like. Oh,
Sorry.
it's okay. Now you're seeing something in me that like you've noticed for a while, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, like, so it's even interesting that we don't even notice some things, but
Yeah.
people can see like you're not your usual self, you know.
Yeah.
So I went to the doctor. And this is another thing, which is kind of like why I wanted to get a second opinion. But the doctor was just, you know, these doctors sometimes are just quick and like they're just trying to get you out and out. So I told her like, hey, I'm really struggling with focusing. Like, I'm like, do you think it's ADHD? Like, what do you think? You know? And she was like, well, I can tell you right now, you don't have ADHD. Like, she's like, just by looking at you, like, you wouldn't even be able to look at me in my eyes. Basically, what she's saying. Like, she's like, people with ADHD, they're like, you know. And I'm like, okay. So she was like, it could be depression, and that was like the same thing that my mom and my sister said. So I was like, ugh. I don't want to think it's that though. Like, you know?
Yeah.
And also another thing too, it's like another tidbit about me is like, I'm anemic. So I always have low energy. So that's always been me for however long.
Yeah.
So I always just equate the low energy, me always wanting to sleep, me always wanting to be whatever, like doing nothing because of that.
Yeah.
And then I realized, but is it also because of now this depression that I so-called have?
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, which then I did more research and I found that like having an iron deficiency can cause that, because fatigue can cause that. Can cause depression. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, well, this is probably it right here. Like my iron levels are like the low of the low. I'm like surprised I'm even breathing right now. It's really bad.
I should get mine. I mean, I know I'm anemic, but like I don't.
Yeah, but that affects it too. That affects
doctor.
it. Like any vitamin deficiencies can affect that.
Dang,
so I was like, oh, maybe that's that. You know. Anyway, so basically, the doctor tried to prescribe me something like very quickly, and I'm like, but you didn't even do like a screening with me. Like you didn't even ask me any more questions. Like, so I was like, I need to get a second opinion. So I found a psychiatrist online, and she did some screenings with me, and she pretty much told me that it was moderate depression and like panic anxiety or something like that. Because at the time I was like really, really anxious, not about like not overwhelmed with like stuff I had to do, like those type of things you feel like you can kind of knock it, but it was more so like I feel like I was gonna die. Like I felt like panic, like paranoid. Yeah. Wow. So I would like, if I'm like, I remember one time I was like on a bus and I was in Colorado, and we're going up the mountains, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna just like fall off the mountain and then we're gonna die. And like I'm just spiraling like that. Like I was just like so anxious about dying and death.
Yeah.
So, and then planes, that was my thing. So like I'd never been afraid of planes until I started to really like have this thing. And I was like afraid of going on planes and like literally just freaking out, sweating. And like, so I'm like, this is not normal for me. Like this is totally different. So that's where I kind of like discovered a lot of that stuff in 2022.
Yeah.
And then today, I'm like, this is so long, but basically at the time I started taking medication in 2022. I took medication for about a year or a little less than a year. And, so I got off of it like early last year, And I'm like, okay, great, cool, whatever, right? Life happens, and then I'm able to differentiate what is circumstantial, like what is causing this depression to be circumstantial versus like, I don't even know what the opposite of that is, but like basically what I had before was not circumstantial. It was just like maybe some chemical imbalances, whatever. But then towards the end of the year, stuff started happening, and I'm like, wow, okay, this is circumstantial. I can fight through this, right?
Yeah.
So I think in that time, that's where I was really trying to like fight for God and to see God and to be very vulnerable with him, because I was like, I didn't notice at the time, but I wasn't like, technically when you take medication, you're kind of relying on it, right? Where it's like, okay, this is helping me to be better in a sense, right? Maybe even thinking differently. I don't know. But I didn't have that this time, that extra boost of serotonin or whatever. Like I didn't have that. So it was just like, I got to fill this out and be with you, God, you know? So that was that. And then it was like, this is kind of not working though. Like, okay, God, I still feel like this, you know? Like, so sometimes I just feel like it's going to be seasons that feel a little bit longer than others. But I think right now where I'm at, it's starting to feel more chemical imbalancey again. Because I think I gotten used to not being on medication and like learning how to deal and cope with, you know, the feelings of depression without. But now I'm like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit better about life, but why is this? And it's not even the depression right now. It's like back to the lack of focusing. So, so I'm like, I don't know. I feel like it's something I'm still exploring, and I really just hope that like, because you know, you hear these things where it's like, okay, it's our generation is like the most anxious, the most depressed, all these different things. I just really hope that it's not like something that is just put on me, but isn't true.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
like,
hard.
you know,
Right.
like, so.
Like a misdiagnosis.
Yeah, like a misdiagnosis. And I mean, I can honestly say I've definitely had down days, so it definitely felt like I was depressed. But I think even this time around again, when I'm saying like, okay, I don't feel as down as I used to, and mostly it feels like it's, you know, linked to the lack of focusing. Do you just throw more like antidepressants and like anxiety medication towards me? You know, like, I don't know. So currently I'm trying to explore like what does it look like without medication, and like doing blood work, and like, you know, figure out what I can, you know, take, vitamins, maybe working out, all those different things. So that I can see how can I avoid it. And it's not a bad thing at all to take medication. Like, I'm not saying that at all, you know. But for me personally, I just don't want to rely on it. You know. So
for sure.
And I know no one wants to rely on it, you know, but it's like, I guess if you have to take it temporarily, like, it makes sense, right? To get yourself back into the groove. And like for me, it was like, I feel like I was like out of whack. So it just felt like something to just kind of get me back in place. And then I can kind of, you know, coast alone.
Yeah. I think this is one, obviously just really needed to talk about. And thanks for like even talking about like medication, because I feel like that is very, very hard for people to share. And be open about whatever. I have a couple like questions, but one, I think it's also great that you were able to talk to God about it, like bring it to him. And that's what I was going to say. I think it's good that you're exploring what works for you, because I think we can get attached to whatever the doctor says and kind of go that route. But I think there is a lot to explore and figure out. And there's a lot to figure out with God in that. But I don't think it's an easy journey, you know?
And I do want to say something too about the medication. Like, I had wrestled so much before actually taking it, because I don't know if there's anyone watching that can relate to this, but I just felt kind of like ashamed. Like, okay, I'm a follower of Jesus. I believe in God. I believe God is powerful. He can save me from this, right? Like, he can take this away from me. So it kind of felt like me relying on medication was not trusting in his power. And that was really hard. But someone said something to me that was very helpful at the time, was like, you know, God provides doctors. He provides these things to really be a resource for us, right? Like, so don't look at it as like something replacing God, but more so to help you, you know? And God has provided these things, right? So that was helpful. But I think there was still shame in that. And even as where I'm at now, I'm like, the idea of like thinking about it again, I'm like, ugh, Like I don't want to do it again, right? So, and it's more so not about it's funny, that's what's so sad about it. It's not about like, part of it was what I said before. It was about that, but it was also part of like what people would think. Like I think that, in the church, not I mean, I'm just saying in churches in general, I think that sometimes it can be frowned upon. Like we don't talk about it a lot, and I think it's because you gotta pray, you gotta do da 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 da. And I don't really know if people fully believe that people are struggling as much as they say they are. And I think that's the shame that I had, where I was like, wow, okay, I'm a leader, I'm like helping people in their faith, and what am I over here looking like struggling? And I saw that as being weak in my faith, rather than like, I don't know why, because it's like, okay, but then I started to have a shift where it's like, wow, I do know that there are other people that are going through this, and I can help them. Now that I'm in their shoes and I understand now, I can help. So God can use me even in this, So, but there was a lot of shame, and still is. It's more so thinking about, what does it look like, right?
Like, for sure.
Which is so sad. We care a lot about what people think.
I mean, it's humbling, right? To do maybe what's best for you, but because it takes you out of the thought of image and like what actually is best for you. And I don't know, I think just a lot of this is a humbling journey. One of the things that I was going to say earlier, kind of when I was tearing up, was I just love that your mom said that. Like that your mom was willing to send you to a doctor, and that she noticed these things and was able to like say that back to you. Because I think that's actually the role of a parent, is like to notice things in their child and to tell their child what they're seeing, like whether it's good things like, hey, I see all these gifts in you, you should pursue this, or like, hey, you usually act like this and this is happening, are you okay? Because I think it's also a big deal for a black mom to tell their black daughter to go to a doctor for their mental health. Like, that's not, and so I think that's amazing. So it was kind of twofold for me. Like, on one side, I just like am like, wow, I feel so much gratitude for your mom doing that. On the other side, like, a side note, like, I was very depressed growing up. Like, maybe like, I don't know, 10 to 18, like, and very like isolated, stayed in my room, didn't talk to people. Like, that was, I don't remember much from my childhood because I was like mostly depressed, and I did tell like my dad about it, and I think this is a little dark, but I think I told him about my suicidal thoughts, and he said, what did he say? He basically said like, we all have thoughts like that, like that's normal. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, if we all want to like die, then I guess this is normal, And so I think a lot of things, I just like, when you hear things like that, you're like, okay, I'm not gonna share stuff anymore. No one wants to hear, and it also doesn't matter because everybody feels this, And so I think it's amazing when we do get to be there for each other. But a part of that is just learning. Like, I don't think my dad knew or understood these things. Like, growing in empathy and creating space for people and validating their experience is a skill, So I don't look like down on anyone or whatever, like, who don't have the skill set, because it's something we all have to build. I mean, the people that are empathetic, maybe they've experienced someone who's had mental health issues, or they fought to grow in the skill set by getting educated, but this isn't something that comes naturally, especially if you haven't experienced it before.
That's
or
true.
If you've never told anyone about your experience and you've just been able to overcome, maybe it's harder for you to empathize with other people. So
and that's kind of how I was before this happened to me. I didn't understand. Like, for me, I'm like, if someone said they were down or whatever, I'm like, why? I'm like, huh? Like, you're being a little. And I will say this though, there are some cases where, like, I think we should also talk about, and I think you can give some really good light into this, of like like, we do know that there are people that feel things very severely, right? And that sometimes they can, I don't want to say be dramatic, but that they can kind of like make things being bigger than what they need to be, right? Like,
exaggerate,
and mislabel things, right? So like, there's those type of people, but then there are those people that like, you know, that would tell me they struggle with certain things, and I never shamed them. Like, I hope I never did, but I just never fully understood. So I would always try to just encourage them and push them and like challenge them, you know. But then it's like, when I went through it, I actually kind of understood. Wow, it is actually hard to get out of the bed. Like, to come to something. It's hard to be around people. Like, it was like so crazy that it was like I would be around people, but I felt so alone, and I actually could not wait to leave. Like, I was like, wow, I cannot wait to go home and just sleep and just like I was like with people, but I just was like, yeah, I don't want to, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like such a weird feeling, especially for me, because I'm like, I love hanging out with my friends. Like, that's my love language, is quality time. So the fact that I didn't want to do those things anymore was like, there's something really wrong, you know?
Yeah.
So now I understand what it's like to feel something so severely, be so down, yada, yada. But I also understand now what it's like to fight for your faith, you know? So I think like part of my push and my encouragement to anyone that's watching, and even for myself, like I'm speaking to myself, it's like I could feel these things so severely and really be down and out. But I think it's really shown me how to really fight for my faith, because it's like, okay, I'm down and out, the world is ending, but does that mean I stop pursuing God? Like, or at least like, I know, and this is the thing, it's really even hard to pursue God in those times, because you are like, so whatever. Yeah. But I think of even like David, he was someone that I think I looked at or like read scriptures when I was kind of down and out, right? Like, and I was just like, wow, like, he really turned that into an opportunity to be more intimate with God, like just being raw and honest. And that's kind of like, I think in the time where I was down and out, like there was purpose that came out of it, you know, as opposed to just like, you know, I'm down. Like there was purpose. And I think what was really helpful for me too was communicating it to people, like I said. That really like pushed me to get out of it, you know, because sometimes it's like you could feel so alone, but then when you just tell someone, you feel, and they understand, right? Hopefully, you feel more supported, and you feel like I'm not in this alone, you know. So I remember one time, like it was like so great. I told someone, long story short, this person knew me very well, and I was talking to someone after church, and they could just tell on my face, like, I wasn't crying, I wasn't doing anything. They could just tell, I don't know what I look like, but they just tell someone's wrong. So they're like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'll talk to you later, because I was in the middle of a conversation with someone. So then I think, like, this person calls me later, and they're like, hey, like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, it's just not a good day for me mentally. I don't know what happened. It's just not a good day. And I think at the time I was getting off of the medication. I was slowly getting off the medication. And that even could have some effects, apparently, if you do it like cold turkey. And I think I did it cold turkey. And I was just like, yeah, it's just not a good day. Like, I'm just not having a good day or whatever. And basically the person just wanted to sit with me. And like do nothing, you know? So the person was having people over. And I was like, yeah, I don't really feel like, but I was like, you know, in those moments too, like I had to really try to push myself to be around people, because I knew it, even if it didn't feel like it helped me, it was just good to be around people instead of being alone in my thoughts. So I just went over, whatever, and people were playing games, and I'm just like, not feeling it. And this person could just tell, like they knew what was going on, but they could just tell, like, you want to just go sit on the couch, just me and you, just sit. I'm like, wow, thank you. Like, thank you. Like, yes, that is what I needed, you know? And so I think even that, communicating with people and like, because I wouldn't want to communicate to someone and they kind of just like, woe is me, you know, in the sense of like, oh, Iman's really going through it, I'm not going to bother her or whatever. Like, I would want someone to really like just be there and in it with me, you know, like sit with me. And like, I'm not asking for you to like challenge me or be like, girl, get out of this, but I'm just wanting you to just like walk with me in this, you know?
For sure.
And so I think that's also what helped me. And yeah, and I think trusting that God has something better. That was kind of, even if I didn't feel it or even if I didn't see it, that was kind of the mindset that kind of like helped me to see the light at the end of the tunnel of like, this is just temporary. You will get past this.
Yeah.
You will move on,
Yeah.
you know? And that was it for me. Like it was, so it does take an intentionality in those times. It's really hard. But I think that as Christians, that is what we're going to have to fight for. You know, like we're going to have to fight to be intentional in those dark times. And even if we cannot be intentional, I think even just being intentional to tell someone so that maybe they can be intentional for us in the sense of like, you know, like I said, just trying to pull us out. Because, you know, I've heard people like Christians, you know, and we could relate to this because like this has happened to me where it's just like you don't look forward to the days, you don't want to live. And I'm like, wow, like we're supposed to have life to the full. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, it just wasn't making sense. And I'm like, I know God doesn't want me to be in this, so I have to really fight to get out of it.